Welcome to you. Welcome into this sacred space. And truly, I want all of you to know that I bow. I bow before your commitment to be here, your willingness to show up and to give of yourself. I bow before the innocence and the purity of your hearts. And so, welcome, welcome, welcome. We could have been born at any time in history. And we were born now. We can meet this way. And what a gift it is to meet in satsang. What a gift. Okay. In about a month from now, we'll have our next retreat, our big retreat of the year at Kripalu Yoga Center. So I hope you can join. July 14th through the 19th. And there's details on my website. But I would love it. Love to see your beautiful faces in person. It's a real gift that we can give ourselves. It's a gift we give to the Sangha and to this world. Just this willingness to show up and to live from the heart, to see and to be seen from the depth of the heart. It's such a gift to be able to come together. In these teachings, to come together in meditation, and even on retreat, it's just to come together in community. It's the most precious gift, and it's a gift that so many of us are wanting. Just to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be reminded, oh yeah, I am divine. I am a bright light. I am good. Sometimes we're born into this world and our mother, she might tell us, you're bad. You're too much, because she didn't know how to be a mother. And when we show up on retreat and we are actually seen, it's a supreme gift, a supreme gift. And it's a gift that my teacher gave me, the first time he saw me. It actually frightened me a little bit when he saw me because it's like, oh wow, he sees my goodness, he sees my light. And my teacher, of course, could actually also see my ego, which that's pretty easy for everyone to see. To see my shadow, my wound. But to see the fullness of me beyond all the human was such a gift. Such a gift. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to him. And of course, in this world that we incarnate into, there's a million ways we can spend our time. I just saw on the news, it's interesting, like with the news media now, it's the corporate news media is so full of lies. We have to go to different sources, but the news, the channels that I was checking in with were letting me know that the Russian Navy, like the Russian Armada, was coming to Cuba to dock right here on our doorstep here in the United States. And, of course, it's not like we are, not like we're saints here in the US, but, it's a lesser of two evils. We'll call it the lesser of three evils, the big Chinese Navy, and then we have the Russians and our own. But, sometimes we dock our boats right off the coast of China, or right, right off the coast of Russia. And now they're doing it with us here. They're going to give us a visit, pretty close to Miami. And it's just insane that we're continuing to play these games of war and these games of violence. If you imagine how much energy, how much manpower, human power is spent assembling these armies to fight each other. And I have friends who are Russian, and I assume they might call me a friend as well. We don't hate each other. That's why are these world leaders playing these games? But as we come together on retreat, as we come together in satsang, we're choosing to play a different game. We're choosing to play in the realm of communion, in the realm of love, and not in the realm of nationalistic or tribal violence. And I think Putin keeps talking about nuclear weapons. I'm not sure if our president, what he's got going on in his mind, but it's just crazy. It's crazy. There is another way to live. And so I'm going to invite us all to close our eyes. And just begin to take some deep breaths. And stepping away from the mind, stepping away from tribalism, stepping away from the world of division. Putting it all down. Whatever the division is within you, it doesn't have to be with our Russian friends. Sometimes it's division with mother or father or sister, brother, aunt, uncle. Sometimes it's just division with our own self. So if there's anything within you that is divided, I'm going to invite you just to put it down. To put it down. And to join me in this space of peace, the space of silence. Just breathing in and breathing out. And experiencing directly this great unified feel. Very ground in the fabric of one's consciousness. The one consciousness of all of life. And for some of you, when you first look at this, you may notice nothing. A great void-like emptiness. And that may bring up, a little bit of fear, feeling of vulnerability. But I'm going to invite you to open to this silence, to trust in it. The same way we trust in the vast night sky. And just allowing anything which is divided, anything which is heartbroken or overwhelmed, or maybe just subtly irritated, giving it permission to empty out, to empty out. To fall away, to be gobbled up in the silence. And so sometimes here on planet Earth, our mind gets nutty. Sometimes our consciousness gets confused. Sometimes our heart feels broken. But there is something here that is not broken. Something here that is not confused. Something here that is vast and spacious and free. And so I invite you this day, this moment, to turn awareness upon itself. And can you recognize your immensity of divinity? Can you recognize this divinity in the space of your mind, the space of your heart, the space of your abdomen? Surrendering into the God of silence. As you Let yourself go and be gobbled up in the hugeness of her presence. You may begin to awaken and discover that you are this presence. That you and her are one. That you do not have to believe in the story of your mind, the insane or maybe boring drama of your life. You don't need to believe in that. But rather, you can let go into this hugeness, this vastness, this immense, undivided clarity. And live from this space. And so I will ask you, what would your life be like if you allow this silence to lead you, to live through you, to speak through you? What would your life be like? If you gently but firmly took the steering wheel away from your guarded, egoic nature and just told it to stop, stop, stop. And then turned around and saw the hugeness, the beauty, the innocence, the purity of your heart, and chose instead to live from this. What would your life be like? If you allowed yourself to be directed by the truth, by the truth. And so I invite you to breathe, to feel, to just gently scan your body and just notice if there's anywhere in your body, in your emotional nature, in your mind, that is ready to put down the fight and to open into this great expanse of love, which is eternally here. And so breathing, feeling, softening, and surrendering into this depth of being. Into this depth of being. And so again, I ask you, can you give yourself to the silence? Can you fully receive this silence? Can you come to know this silence as the very fabric of your nature? And so I welcome you into this space. This week, actually, I think this was last week, I received this email. Some of you know John from England, and John sent me this email, and I think, we all know this experience of being overwhelmed on the path, and so I thought I'd speak a little bit about it. John writes, I was getting an immense amount of pain and grief coming up, which I felt was cleansing. And yesterday, however, I felt an incredible weight of rage descend on me, like a sack of rocks. It is all stuff I am familiar with, hatred and fury, which makes me punch and throw my arms around and curse and swear. I work with it in therapy and I get massage and try to release it. Anyway, I got out into the country and allowed it all to express. But it frightened me and made me wonder if something had gone wrong with my process. I know all this frustrated stuff has been suppressed for many years and needs to come out. But I hadn't really expected this. If I go on doing other retreats, I need to know that this thing is an okay thing to be happening. And we human beings, we're funny creatures. We are creatures that have loud, wild, expressive emotions. And on the spiritual path, we're taught to control our emotions. And, in old school spirituality, like we're just taught to repress our emotions, to out meditate them, to try to spiritually bypass them. But that's not what John's speaking about. John's saying, like, gosh, there's a lot of emotion that's moving through me. Is this okay? Is it okay for all this emotion to be flowing? Now, if we ask the space of silence, is it okay that people come and fall asleep during satsang? Of course it is. Of course it is. If we ask the space of silence, is it okay that people come and are wild and crazy? Of course it is. Is it okay that people come and they are deeply serene? Of course it is. Is it okay that people come and are incredibly arrogant? Of course it is. It's okay. This silence allows there to be room for everything. For there to be room for everything. The silence is a space, and it fully allows. It fully receives us. And John, the invitation here is whatever it is that's within you, can you allow it to be consumed by this silence? And so silence is such a great gift for wild and dramatic emotions. Like wild and dramatic emotions. Silence is an incredible gift. Like if we have an insane mind, the silence is an incredible gift. An incredible gift. If we have a mind that's grasping for attention, this silence is an incredible gift. Things become not okay when we identify with our ego. You know, I grew up in a time, what was the old saying? Children should be seen, not heard. That's a fun one. It's just like your parents told you, like, don't be kids, don't be wild. So to avoid this as children, like we always were outside. Whether it was super hot or super cold, we were always outside. Because when you're outside, when you're in nature, nature doesn't argue with you, doesn't tell you you're wrong. It doesn't tell you you're wrong. And so, John, if you found yourself out in nature and screaming and grieving and allowing some rage to empty, that's beautiful, my friend. That's you opening to the silence. That's a great gift you give your body, is to no longer carry those things within you, to let them empty out, to let them empty out. I used to do this thing by my teacher's house. There's we call it a river here in the West, the Florida River. But back in Kentucky, this thing would be called a creek. And so I have to drive across the Florida River, across this dirt road and a little bridge, and start climbing up to his house. And my teacher would ask, say, hey, stop at the river and just leave all your stuff there. You just throw it in the river and let it float downstream. And when it floats, like if it starts to float downstream, don't look downstream and try to pick it up again. Basically, he's saying if you're letting go of something, let it go and let it empty. But don't go downstream and pick it up again. And so, John, if we want to be on this path in an efficient way, you let go and you let it release and you let it empty out. And if that involves some big emoting is welcome. It's welcome. It's welcome. But just like anything in this world, we can become addicted. And some people are really good at putting on performances of letting go, but what they're really doing is seeking attention, and so they're not actually letting go. They're being loud and they're craving attention. And I've spoken about this in the last couple of satsangs. There was a number of people a small number of people in the sangha who weren't really letting go. They're playing the victim card too much for too long. And we've all played that card, that hand. I've played it. I played it for many years. I didn't know how to let go of that hand. But if I was deeply honest, I knew how to let go of that hand. I was just expecting that if I played that hand, I might get some type of attention, or someone might feel pity for me, or someone would do something for me. but it's a terrible way to live. It's a pitiful way to live. There's a more efficient way that requires a deep honesty and a willingness to trust in the grace of God, to have faith in the process of letting go and letting God, to have faith that if I let go of my pity party, that there'll be another party, a much greater party, a much greater party. There'll be a communion with the divine. A communion with this world. And so, John, yes, please, let go. And there's plenty of space for big emotions. There's plenty of space for rage and sadness. There's plenty of space. But just like within any human community, if we say we're here to let go, but we are actually here to seek attention, your friends in the community might say, hey, what are you doing here? Are you here to get egoic attention? Or are you here to let go fully and completely? And this is, something that's hard as a human being. Like my older brother, I'll tell a silly story, but my older brother had twins. First he had a little boy, and then he had twin girls. And when I went over to their house, I was young on the spiritual path, and I went over to his house, and I was this young fellow who spent all this time in silence and in meditation. I went to his house. Everyone was screaming. It's just like screaming kids, just this like screaming at the top of their lungs. And I was like, oh my God, like they just have, they had a lot of kids just real quick. Anyone with twins, it's like you got to be a living saint to raise twins. But when there was all these, everyone was fighting for attention. And so they just played a game. Whoever yelled the loudest got the most attention. Got the most attention. And with our egoic natures, like that's kind of hardwired into us. Whoever is the loudest, they're the one who's going to get the most attention. But see, in this world, in this spiritual world that we're joining in, of course, God is always giving us attention. But you won't actually receive the love. You won't actually receive the peace until you are willing to be peaceful. God plays this interesting game with us, that if we want to open and know and experience the qualities of the divine, we must become like her. If we want to know the Christ, We must become Christ-like. We must walk in the direction of the Christ. We don't become Christ-like through screaming at the top of our lungs. How bad we're suffering egoically. Or everyone, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. If we want to know God, we must be willing to put down our programming. And so in order to put down our programming, we have to be honest and look inside and say, what am I doing? How am I living? What thoughts am I believing? What thoughts am I believing? Like the first 20 years of my adult life, I was so financially broke. And if anyone would just if anyone could unscrew my head and just look inside at the thoughts, you would see that there were all these monastic thoughts, all these beliefs that you need to be poor, live in poverty to know God. Really silly beliefs, but that's ones that I was conditioned into from just different incarnations. And so if I was going to know, if I wanted to know about God's prosperity and abundance, I had to first let go of my thoughts about poverty. There wasn't room to serve two masters. And so the great invitation of God, and that's all these teachings are an invitation, is to join, to merge with the divine. It's one of the great gifts that actually, when I met my teacher, I just knew this. I knew how the game worked. I met my teacher. I saw his presence was great, was immense. It was very simple. I was just going to spend time with him and merge into his consciousness. Mimic is the wrong word. Mimic sounds trite. But I was going to merge. I was going to do what he did. And the doing was really just a being. Because we were walking around working shovels and hammers, and it was carrying suitcases for people who'd come and visit, and making their beds and cooking meals, and all this stuff of when people come on retreats. The invitation was to be as he was. And I just knew that. I knew that's how the game worked. I knew that if I held on to all of my beliefs, all of my ways, well, that wasn't going to be the way to be enlightened, to wake up, to know the truth. And so when we show up in a context like this, it's important to have a basic level of humility, Like, oh yeah, I am here because someone is inviting me into a new world. A new world. Or I am here because someone is inviting me into the beauty of my own heart. It's like, please, join me in this world, join me in your world, in your divine world. Eventually it's all the same world. But it is a walking away from the walls, from the guardedness, from the no and walking into a big yes. Now, yesterday, I said to my little girls, like, hey, come on, let's spend the day with daddy. And she was like, no, I want to stay with mom. And her and mom are like, they're like attached at the hip. And, it's gotten a little bit unhealthy. My daughter's 10 and my wife, she's just giving everything to this kid. I'm just like, just come on, spend some time with dad. And, I'll be just kind of blunt here. Dad is the one in the house with the rules. Mom doesn't have much rules. Dad's got the rules. So I'm always second choice. Although I'm sure some of you would love to spend the day with me. And I'd love to spend the day with you. At my house, I'm second choice. Sometimes, I'll do anything but hang out with dad because he has the rules. But finally I said, look, you're coming with dad. And she kind of heed and hawed and resisted. And I told her, hey, get a swimming suit on and let's get in the van. We'll get the paddleboard. And she said, where are we going? And one of the things about me that sometimes I can be a pain in the butt as a father, but I like to have a surprise. I don't like everything to be known. My father used to do it to me too. He'd take me for a ride somewhere, drive me crazy. Be like, where are we going? Where are we going? And see, we don't like the unknown. Humans don't like the unknown. And so we started to drive up into the mountains. And my little girl's like, how long are we going to be gone? How long is it going to take? When do we get to go home? And so we drove and we drove and we drove. We drove up above tree line. We were up at 10,500 feet. It's lake, it's called Little Mullis Lake. And, for those of you in places with water, you might not call it a lake, but we're going to call it a lake here in Colorado, Little Mullis Lake. And it was so beautiful. And I got her out there on the paddleboard. She said, Daddy, I really love this. I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But we have to be willing. We have to be willing to put down our ego, to put down our fight, to put down our resistance, and let someone show us a new world. Otherwise, we'll just live in that same old kind of crusty old world that we all know. And so as a Sangha, I would like us to try something new together. Something fresh, something dynamic. To let go of that old voice in our head. And to look out at life with awe and with innocence. And to say, okay, God, you show me something new. Show me something greater than the voice of my mind. Show me something greater than this old irritable self. But just like with making new friends, if you make new friends, if you're trying to make them, you need to make space for them. You can't hang out with your old friends 7 days a week. Be like, I'm going to meet some new friends. You're just going to be with your old friends, having the same conversations, doing the same things. One of the hardest things for people to do when they're struggling with addiction is just to say no to that thing. Be like, I'm going to try something new. They start walking in the direction of something new, and they're like, oh, let me go back here and have a smoke first. It's just like, that's not the way. That's not the way. If we're going to quit smoking, quit drinking, quit, just the old way of being. And maybe it's just, I love what Jennifer told me. If we're going to stop being the old stick in the mud, we got to walk away from the stick in the mud. Like we got to walk away and walk somewhere else. We got to walk to the sandy beach. We got to open to something new. We have to be willing to stand in silence. And we have to be willing to fail a little bit. Because often when we first open up, when we try something new, like we got the paddle boards out the other day. And so this river that I have, like right here in town, oh my God, it's been hot here in Durango. And the river just looks so delicious and wonderful. And I've been like, it's been hot and dry. And it's like, oh yeah, let's all go jump down in the river. We jumped in the river. That thing's like 42 degrees. If any of you jumped in a 42 degrees river, that'll make you scream. It'll make you scream, but it wakes you up. And you're like, wow, I'm alive. I'm alive. I am alive. I'm alive. And this, I'm gonna say this. This is gonna sound harsh, but so like everyone's going down by the river, and there's these high school boys, and they were the definition of doofuses. Is the word I'm going to use. They were just like, I don't think I've ever seen such doofuses in my life, but they showed up, and it was like one of them put his toes in, and he screamed, and he was terrified. And the other tall, skinny, lanky one just ran and jumped and just dived in that river. I'm going to encourage you to be like the second doofus. The second one. To jump in. Just to jump in. He goes like, well, let me see. And maybe if I go real slow, it'll somehow, it ain't warming up. If you want this river to be warm, come in October, because it's had the whole summer to warm up. Right now, it's just melted snow 12 hours ago. Like that's what my river is. It's melted snow 12 hours ago. But the point here being, if we're going to step into some new worlds, you got to be willing to have a little bit of adventure in your life. An adventure to try something new, different, fresh. And when you're willing to jump into this silence, into this great love, into this immensity of being, you might hoot and holler at first. You might get confused. You might get overwhelmed. But if you stay a while, you might begin to realize, I don't need to be afraid of the hugeness of what I am. I don't need to be afraid of this thing called God. Where God is busy shouting at us, you are me, I am you. Wake up and see the truth, taste the truth, live the truth. Live the truth. But the only way to live it is through embodying it, through joining with it fully. We'll never know the truth if we're busy in our mind, identifying with every thought, hiding behind every guard and wall and shield. You'll never know what you are if you're scared. If you're scared. But if you're willing to open, to jump, and to leap, you might discover that what you are is beyond fear, is beyond death, beyond division. Something quite, quite incredible. And so anyways, and so please let us join together in love and truth and strength and power. Good night, everyone. So good to be with y'all.